again, off again possibility of Ball State coming to the blue for the Humanitarian Bowl is definitely on again. After a long meeting today by the Humanitarian Bowl board regarding who to invite for the December 30th bowl game, today the board meeting to discuss whether or not to keep the Broncos at home for the holidays. The board meeting, which was attended by WAC Commissioner Carl Benson and BSU Athletic Director Gene Blameyer, didn't accomplish much, at least on the surface. Instead, they decided not to vote because, as Bowl Director Kevin McDonald told me, their vote doesn't count. McDonald says the Western Athletic Conference could effectively veto any vote the board made regarding the release or holding of Boise State to the Humanitarian Bowl, which puts everything in Carl Benson's corner, who is trying behind the scenes to get Ball State to come to Boise and play the Broncos. A dream scenario for the Bowl, the Broncos, the conference, but not for Ball State.
We wanted to do something that I guess really matters, and to us voting to release or hold Boise State's not our decision, so there was no reason for our board to vote to hold a release. What we did decide on is we want to pursue a Boise State-Ball State game in the Rhodes Humanitarian Bowl this year.
Now, Carl Benson told me last week that they've been pursuing that matchup between the Cardinals and Broncos, and USA Today reporting the Bowl might be trying to sweeten the payout and ticket allotments to entice Ball State to come to Boise. It still leaves the hurdle of what to do with the ACC, who's contractually committed to the December game. If all this falls through, there's the Poinsettia Bowl, who would jump at the chance to match Boise State and TCU in San Diego. And for those of you holding out hope, the BCS technically could still choose Boise State for a game, but would have to do so over Ohio State, a team with more fans, more tradition, and more television ratings. That's the important part. Final BCS selections will be announced on Sunday.
Well, officials with the Rhodes Humanitarian Bowl, they're on the record. They want Boise State to stay at home, play Ball State at Bronco Stadium. David Augusto is here. He's been following that story all day and has details.
Well, it would be a matchup of unbeatens on the blue. The
30, so that's going to change things as far as this fog outside. And there's also a chance of a rain shower that could come into the valley and some snow for the mountains. I've got more details on that. I've got your forecast coming up.
All right, Rick, thanks. Well, officials with the Rhodes Humanitarian Bowl, they're on the record. They want Boise State to stay at home, play Ball State at Bronco Stadium. David Augusto is here. He's been following that story all day and has details.
Well, it would be a matchup of unbeatens on the blue. The Rhodes Humanitarian Bowl Board of Directors met this morning and into the afternoon to try and determine whether to keep the Broncos home for the holidays, rather than making a decision on whether to release Boise State from its obligation to the hometown game. The board instead said it will make a strong recommendation to the Western Athletic Conference to pursue a Boise State-Ball State matchup.
We're not trying to do anything for anybody other than really try to put together a great bowl game. And so today's vote, or meeting if you will, was really about, you know, what direction can we give to the WAC that's meaningful, and us voting to hold or release Boise State at the end is really not meaningful.
The H-Bowl does not have the final say on whether the Broncos stay in the hometown bowl. A WAC committee will make that decision. That meeting will take place tomorrow and consists of Commissioner Carl Benson and several WAC athletic directors. There is more on this story right now at KTVB.com, including a poll in which you can vote where the Broncos should go bowling. A lot of different opinions on this.
I'd like to see those results. In the meantime, Ball State doesn't want to come here and play on the blue turf. Smart money on the Broncos going to San Diego?
Maybe. This Ball State thing's not dead yet, although, as you mentioned, Ball State doesn't really want to play the Broncos on the blue, a competitive disadvantage, to say the least, for them.
All right, David, we'll see you in a few minutes.
And now Joe Hughes with today's Channel 6 Sports.
We ran an online poll over the weekend that showed that most fans would rather see the Broncos head to the Poinsettia Bowl and to potentially take on TCU than to stay in town and play in the Rhodes Humanitarian Bowl. But that opinion seems to be changing according to the poll we ran earlier tonight, depending on the matchup in that H-Bowl. If it's a battle of undefeated teams like Boise State against Ball State, the two undefeated teams that are potentially going to be left out of the BCS Bowl mix, then people are interested in this. Ball State has a reluctance to play Boise State on its home blue turf, at least the head coach does, but it sounds like the athletic director is interested in the matchup, and there are some incentives that potentially may be thrown in to make it more palatable for Ball State to play on the Broncos' home turf. Those would potentially include more money in the payout, a Boise State visit to Ball State on a future football schedule, and major play for this game of undefeateds on ESPN. Now, part of the mix has to include Ball State winning on Friday night in their conference championship game so they would remain undefeated. And here's the quote from Rhodey's Humanitarian Bowl Executive Director Kevin McDonald. We have a very unique opportunity here. We've been working on it for weeks. We do have some traction on it. We've cleared a number of hurdles to make this happen.
As many of you know, Boise State has wrapped up yet another undefeated season with a big win over Fresno State on Friday. And now it's a wait-and-see game to figure out who the Broncos will face and where. Fox 12's Shane Wells joins us now with more on those possibilities. Hi, Shane.
Hey, well, everyone, wondering where they're going to end up, what the journey ahead for them is. Are they going to end up in San Diego? Is it going to be Shreveport, maybe Detroit, the blue turf, or maybe even something a little more unexpected? It does have a nice ring to it, doesn't it? Unfortunately, though, BSU's chance of playing in a BCS game are slim, despite being undefeated and ranked 9th in the nation. So what's next?
Looks like either the Poinsettia Bowl in San Diego, California, against probably TCU because BYU will go to Las Vegas, or the Humanitarian Bowl against Wake Forest, Maryland, somebody like that.
Another possibility, Boise State versus Ball State, the battle of the unbeaten. The big issue with that is finding a site.
The Ball State people, the athletic director, really does not want to travel. He does not want to come to Boise, which is, you can see that.
Paul J. Schneider of KBOI went on to say one idea that popped up over the weekend was to have Ball State and Boise State face off in the Independence Bowl in Shreveport, Louisiana.
That's an interesting scenario to have the two of them meet on a neutral site, thousands of miles away from either campus. I don't know if anybody would go to that game or not.
But we do know Boise State could fill the stands if they appeared in the Humanitarian Bowl. In terms of recruiting, Schneider says there's a better choice, which again brings us back to Boise State versus TCU in San Diego. At this point, that looks to be one of the most likely scenarios, but one that can be perplexing. Is it poinsettia or poinsettia?
I don't care what it is. Poinsettia, I guess, but I mean, it'd be nice to go down there back in California. You know what I'm saying? A lot of California guys, so 2 hours from the house, nice weather. I mean, what much more can you ask for?
Although it sounds nice, don't book your plane ticket yet. There could be more surprises on the way.
In the next 2-3 days, something might come up, something that nobody has thought of to this point. That always seems to happen, and that could get Boise State out of the most likely scenarios.
So if Boise State does not end up in the Humanitarian Bowl, Schneider says he thinks it will be Nevada or Fresno representing the WAC.